please have the panelists join us here. That was quite a way to kick off the session with incredibly positive energy, and it's so appropriate as we're going to talk about cooking energy in this session, and also appropriate that it's a post-lunch session, so it's all coming together for us here. Probably most of you didn't think about how your food was cooked when you had lunch earlier, but today we're going to delve a little bit into that in this session as we talk about the preparation of food, especially in the developing world. So I'm joined here by fellow panelists. Thank you, Rocky, for that inspiring performance.
Thank you, people. Thank you. Thank you.
We'll give Rocky a few minutes to catch his breath here before we start and talk a little bit with our panelists. But as you just heard from the video, there are about 3 billion people around the world who are dependent on food that is cooked over open fires or very traditional stoves. And this causes millions of deaths annually, so not in total, but millions of deaths every year due to this prolonged exposure to cook stove smoke. There's just significant emissions that harm the environment, accelerate climate change, and women can spend up to 5 hours a day in the process of collecting the fuel and cooking. So it really doesn't allow them to engage as much within their economies. So today and this week has been all about the Sustainable Development Goals. How do we be transformative? How do we accelerate change? If the Sustainable Development Goals are truly not going to leave anyone behind, we have to address this issue of clean cooking. If we're looking to ensure a world where growth is sustainable for our planet, we have to address the issue of clean cooking. If we are to engage women inclusively and equitably in all of our societies and our productive engagement, we have to address this issue of cooking. So it's an issue that cannot be ignored and is central and core to almost all of the SDGs. So what's the solution to this? Is it about giving away stoves free of charge to those who don't have it? No, the answer to that isn't. In fact, our colleague from Myanmar talked about that earlier this morning. When you give away something that's free, people don't value it, they don't fully understand its use. And you're not really starting with where we think you should start, which is with the user, with the consumer. So what we and about 1,700 of partners over the last several years have been doing is to really develop a market for clean cooking solutions in the developing world. And what do we mean by that? The idea here is really to start with the user, the consumer, not to view them as a beneficiary or a passive recipient, but someone that's active in the process. So start with the user, understand their needs, understand how they cook, understand the fuel that's available to them. Start with that and then provide options through innovation and technology that give them the choices. So again, don't make a decision on behalf of the user, but provide them with options and choices so they can decide what best meets their needs. Then be able to provide payment solutions. We hear a lot coming out of Africa in particular of pay-as-you-go solutions, so people can buy what used to be very expensive fuel, in the form of electricity and gas, but they pay for it in small increments. And the same is with these clean cook stoves as well. So these are the different types of things that about 1,700 partners around the world are engaged in ensuring that there's a market for clean cooking solutions. But if we are truly to be able to get people to change their behavior and use these stoves and fuels, the whole issue of raising awareness and behavior change becomes such a significant part of the equation. So yes, we've done all the work in providing those choices and technologies and options, but now it comes down to the user and how to make them aware of why they should transition from the way they've been cooking to this cleaner, more efficient way of doing so, and ensuring that they do that for all of their needs as opposed to just a portion of their cooking needs. So it's a real pleasure today to be joined with 3 experts in this space. So we've got Kate, who is the co-founder and producer of a Mediae company based doing a lot of edutainment and development work in sub-Saharan Africa. And she's going to talk in particular about a new approach that they've taken through edutainment over the last few years and how they've applied that to the clean cooking sector. Then we've got Orode, who is the country director for Africare in Nigeria. And Africare has been very focused over the decades really in looking at development and very inclusive development on the continent. And of course, Rocky, you've all met our proud ambassador for the Global Alliance for Clean Cooking, who's really using his voice in so many different ways to be able to create awareness from the household level all the way up to policy levels to be able to facilitate change. So first, Kate, I'd like to start with you to talk a little bit about just this idea of edutainment, you know, and how you've sort of applied that in the clean cooking space as well.
Well, we come from a perspective which believes very, very strongly in entertaining our audiences, that if you don't entertain your audience, you will lose your audience. And in Kenya, I guess about 20, 25 years ago, you suddenly started having to pay for media space. So if you weren't going to actually get big audiences, you weren't going to get the advertisers on board. And that would mean that you wouldn't get on air. So we had to start looking at ways in which we could get big audiences. And the way to do that was to entertain them. And we've done that through a variety of different mediums, drama being one. But the one that we've developed for Clean Cookstoves is a sister program to a really successful program we launched about 5 years ago, I guess now, called Shamba Shape Up. Shamba being in Kenya the word for smallholding, farm. And Shamba Shape Up goes to different farmers each week throughout Kenya, talks to both the women and the men about what constraints they face on farm, and then we show and work with them on implementing improved ways of doing things, techniques and technologies both, but affordable and doable. So that's taken off big time, and we've got about 4 million viewers for that. It's in Kiswahili and in English. And on the back of that, we've launched Shamba Chef, which is the program we're going to see a little clip of in a minute, which is targeted very much at women. Again, goes around different parts of Kenya, meeting women, finding out what their constraints are when it comes to cooking, and what it is that they know about cookstoves and the constraints that they face. Also, there's quite a strong nutrition component, which works really well with the cooking, the cookstoves. So it's very entertaining. It's got celebrity chefs from Kenya. It's got cook-off competitions. It's lively, engaging. We've got 2 very good presenters who are good fun. So it's very much women talking to other women viewers about why these gadgets work for them and what it brings to them to enhance their livelihoods. So perhaps, should we have a little
Let's take
look?
a peek.
Welcome to Shamba Chef. In this series, we delve into the most traditional of African cultures, food.
Traveling across Kenya to find out what we eat, where we get it, and how we cook it.
We explore new ways to cook, make it quicker, safer, cleaner, and at half the cost.
We meet families, enter their homes, and find out what happens in Kenyan kitchens.
Learning, giving advice, transforming kitchens, and most importantly, enjoying food.
So Mama, this is your kitchen. This is where all the cooking happens.
Yes. This place is quite smoky, and especially for Mama George in her condition, plus the kids also coming in here in all this smoke.
So I'm going to introduce her to a modern firewood jiko. How much do you spend on buying firewood per month?
I use 1,300 per month.
That's a lot of money. The good thing is that with Kuniokoa, you'll be able to save 55% of that cost. So it means in a month, you're able to save roughly 700 shillings.
You're just in time to see our contestant.
Lighting up their jikos and get going.
Honest, what do you think about the Kuniokoa stove?
It is very good. It's very economical. The heat is sufficient, and I really like it.
The winner for today is... Mama Lucy.
Mama Lucy made the most delicious and nutritious meal and won a fantastic Kuniokoa stove.
She was so excited. I hope the stove has helped her.
And if you at home would like to win one of these fantastic stoves, SMS iChef.
See you next time.
When we travel to another Kenyan kitchen right here on
Shamba Chef.
That's good. Sorry, shall I?
Yeah.
So that I should explain. It's on broadcast in English and in Kiswahili, which obviously a lot of farmers speak in the rural areas. And in fact, that clip is taken from episode 1, which we launched on Sunday, like the day before yesterday, kind of thing. And we got 1.8 million viewers, which is really. We're very excited about it. Yeah.
And it was, just to put that number in perspective, when we were speaking, you said that was the #1 show in its time slot Sunday evening in Kenya.
Yes, it was.
So
the next one down was KTN, I think, and that was half of what we got.
Yeah,
so.
that's great. Yeah. Well, you know, looking at that clip, it does show several different elements. So there's a competitive element, there's a woman talking to women and sort of engaging in conversation. There's the time and budget savings that comes from using a more efficient stove. How did you go about devising the content and determining sort of what elements to put in the show? And it's a series, correct?
It is. It's a 13-part series, and that's just the first series. We hope it'll run like Shamba did. And continues to do. How do we find out? We do quite a lot of formative research where we talk to women about what it is they're wanting to, what the constraints are that they're facing. And so often it's not what kind of we think they will be. It's so important, I think, to actually find out. So things like, obviously cost is an issue, but also an interesting finding was the speed with which food can be prepared. So people often have more than one stove so there are kind of nuances that we wouldn't know if we didn't go and talk to women. I think also it's about kind of hearing it from them. So there is the show, the TV show, but we also make it into as much of a two-way communication as we can, partly by having women on the program talking to other women, but also we invite people, you might have seen at the end of that, where we invite people to text in if they want more information or if they've got questions or if they want to be referred to one of the manufacturers. So we feature 3 main manufacturers in the programs, and they of course also feed in their content because they're really knowledgeable. And also ministry, actually. We've got Ministry of Health and Ministry of Ag, and
It ties nicely to the sessions this morning where we talked about being proximate, you know, and really understanding what the issues are, hearing from the users directly to be able to shape some of the content. So thank you for that. Orode, coming to you, how do you take, and there's something similar in Nigeria that's taking place now in terms of, you know, accessing, in that case, LPG gas for cooking. How would you take sort of this category building, large-scale television, radio sort of programs and translate that to behavior change at the household level?
So thank you. It's very nice to watch. In Nigeria, our challenge has been a little different. So our focus has been on LPG, which is liquefied petroleum gas, and getting women to actually switch from the dominant dirty fuels that we use now, which in some cases is firewood, in some cases is charcoal or kerosene, and getting them to switch to LPG. But there's a perception in Nigeria, a misperception, that LPG is for the wealthy. And this perception, unfortunately, is prevalent not only among people in lower socioeconomic classes, but also even among the wealthy themselves. So you hear people say, well, they can't afford it. And on some level, they are correct in the sense that the switchover cost is pretty high. It's $27 now that it's come down from what used to be about $70, because we've now responded to the people, some of that earlier research, which happened over the past decade, to now get people to start thinking about manufacturing small single burner stoves for LPG. So at the level of the household, what we've then, in talking with women, one of the things that came across very clearly was the concern about the limitation on cost, but also about fear. And so we also had to go into communities and settle down with people and ask, what are the issues you face? How can we help you solve them? And cost and fear translate also into what people term as landlords who won't permit LPG in their buildings. And so we have to address that as an issue as well. So it's really about sitting with the people, identifying what their individual concerns are, getting people who are from the community with whom they can identify, who speak the various languages that they do, to go from house to house in pairs, using tools that have been developed as a result of a lot of communication with them. And so one of the things that's showing up there now is gas stove safety tips, because we found that sitting right next to cost, fear was the greatest other concern that made people not switch. And so when you take cost and fear out of the way, then people say, okay, we're interested, and they actually move along the behavior change continuum into embracing and then becoming confident about entering into cook-offs in the community, and then actually becoming advocates for LPG. So getting people into the homes of women, getting women into the homes of women, having conversations with them, showing them how to access credits, showing them how to go into their normal village savings and loans associations or their cooperatives to draw down on those when it's their turn, and then getting them to overcome fear by actually demonstrating cooking with them in their homes and showing them how to maintain an LPG stove safely.
You know, you were also talking earlier about how cooking is an enabler. So it's not really an end unto itself, but it helps women to engage in so many other things. So can you talk a little bit more about that and what you're seeing as women transition to cleaner stoves?
So one of the things that we found, and we've been in this space for a few years now, but we've only started to implement directly and watching the women move along this continuum just in this year. And one of the very interesting things has been that it's given women permission to engage around household finances a little more constructively. So because they are buying an appliance that's a little expensive compared to what they would normally be thinking about themselves doing, they're also starting to ask the other questions about what else could I be making decisions around that I've sort of not allowed myself to take the permission to do. And I think why that's important is because beyond cooking, which is seen as your domain and which you hadn't taken over completely before, you now start to see the other areas where, yeah, it's your domain, and you might want to step out into that area. So empowerment around decision making, getting people to speak up a little more in public places around what it is that we do, why we do what we do, the decision I took to purchase a cook stove, talking to other women and helping them also take charge of their lives. So making decisions around childcare, making decisions around schooling, whatever it is, the other decisions they could be making for their children, those things are starting to happen. And, you know, we thought this was about cook stoves and about the decisions made in the kitchen. But we're finding that these are about empowering women to have a voice and then stepping out in the community and saying, we made this decision to do this or that or the other. So it's empowering for me too.
Yeah. No, and I think it's also what we hear is the time that women get back. You know, it's more efficient cooking. You've got more time to do other things as well.
To do the other things that are also important to you, because they don't like to hear that cooking spends a lot of their time because they think that's part of what they're supposed to be doing with their time. But engaging around the other things that they could be doing as well while they cook or when they reduce the amount of time they spend on cooking.
Right, thank you. We'll look forward to seeing how the campaigns roll out and what the impact is. Rocky, I hope you've gotten your breath back here. We've been privileged to have you as an ambassador for a few years, and I've seen you work both at the grassroots level, at the household level, but also at the national and international levels, where behavior change takes a different form, getting governments to understand the need to integrate this issue, which has not been on the radar for many of them for several years, you know, centrally on their development agendas. So can you talk a little bit about some of your experiences there and the behavior change that has to take place at multiple levels?
Well, I mean, the issue of cooking, you know, people have been cooking on open fires for, you know, a long time. And most of us come from, you know, if you're connected to a traditional home, you probably have seen that, you know, happening. And for me, I recognize also from earlier on there that clean cooking, you know, being able to, you know, scale that and have people have access to cleaner ways of cooking was had so many benefits. But at the same time, too, you're going to be challenging stereotypes, you know, which is in terms of traditional way of cooking and changing ingrained cultural practices, you know. So it required being empathetic and understanding the cultural context, and at the same time using that as a means to engage. And once you engage, you're able to know the angles in which you can be able to, you know, approach people and be able to spur eventual behavioral change and then eventual adoption, you know. And so, you know, through my travels, you know, I was actually also very privileged to be involved in when we were doing the, you know, the National Country Action Plan for Ghana. And I remember, you know, a lot of our leaders who had seen me in the newspapers, you know, like talking about this issue. I mean, they were, first of all, their interest was piqued because they were like, okay, cooking, and then you as a musician, so where is the intersection? And I try to communicate to them, first of all, that the concept, first, you know, there's a public health concept, and outside of that too was the social entrepreneurship aspect of it. Because most of our policymakers are constantly trying to see how we can be able to empower people from the bottom up. And the cooking model, first of all, addressed, you know, that issue because along the value chain, you had women empowerment and you also had ability to empower young entrepreneurs and women also being an integral part of that. So in doing so too, you're strengthening the household. You're also making overtures in terms of being able to alleviate poverty because when people are empowered, first of all, savings in time, it's savings in money. Having efficient burning cook stoves, you know, you're dealing with environmental issues, you know, and even on a bigger scale for the governments, you know, who are talking about climate change, you know. I also communicated to, you know, I remember one time with our, you know, a chief of staff of our former president, you know, who asked me pointedly, and I was telling him that, you know, cook stoves was almost like collecting everybody and having them take action in terms of climate change, because once you put that into people's hands, first of all, you're, the carbon and also methane and black carbon, which were contributing to climate change, you were dealing with that and turning everybody who is doing this adoption into an active participant in mitigating climate change. You know, so for the policymakers, all of a sudden, you know, that started making sense to them, you know, and I think that, you know, obviously changing, you know, ancient, old behaviors and ways of doing things is not really, you know, it provides a lot of challenge. But I feel that once we're able to let people see that this is also something that can spur development on so many different dimensions. I even one time told, you know, that iPhones, you know, disrupted communication and phones. And I feel that one of the biggest open markets that is waiting for disruption is the cook stove market. So I felt that that should be something that our country should foresee, and be one of the first people to really step in and be part of the alliance and be able to take advantage of this economic opportunity.
And certainly Ghana has done that with Ghana as one of the countries through Rocky's leadership that included clean cooking in their climate action plans that were presented in Paris. So we actually, through that example, we have another 49, 50 countries that included it. So certainly impact at the policy level has been achieved, and it's voices like yours that allow for the door to be open for the rest of the more technical grassroots folks to sort of walk through down the path. So it's an important
and I also see it more in terms of investors too, you know, like in terms of the global community, that this is an opportunity for spurring social enterprise really across the globe, and also a primary thing to, you know, fight poverty.
Right. Yes. So we're running a little low on time here, but I just want to give 30 seconds each to both Kate and Orode. Talk a little bit about impact. How do you measure impact? How do we ensure that what we're doing is working? Because clearly we've got a long road ahead, and we need to make sure we're replicating things that are working and not necessarily those that aren't.
Shall I start?
Sure, please.
Okay. We do quite a lot of research around all of our programming, and we do, the way we divide it is knowledge, attitude, and practice. That's our kind of... So we go in before we broadcast, and then we do a similar study after we've broadcasted. So, and we also do qualitative focus groups and that kind of thing. And we've done that around all of our shows. Shamba Shape Up's been very interesting in terms of, I think it's 80% change knowledge and 43% practice. I mean, it's hard to measure. You know, it's stated change, but anyway, it's an indication. And then every now and again, we don't commission it, but our funders commission big quantitative studies, which I think on Shamba's Shape Up, it was something like $25 million of milk production extra from watching the show. So the cost of doing that study, we could have done a whole series, but you have to do it.
You have to have
really.
the impact. You need to understand it to be able to know where to invest, in the future.
Right.
I think similar to Kate. As we started, we're taking all the data basically from the women on what it is that they're starting with, how they're reacting. And then as time goes on, we continue to measure that data. Now, the data is a lot of data to collect, and to track behavior is hard, but it's necessary in order for us to know where the biggest bang is for our buck. Our funders also will be commissioning post our community interventions, going back into the homes and measuring after we've seen the women who switched what it is, whether they're actually using those new Cookstoves. But we're also following very carefully and ensuring that if they're not using them, we understand why they're not using them. The idea being that we recognize that behavior change is slow, but it can make an important difference. And if we don't achieve that, then it doesn't really matter how many jingles there are out there. If communication is not complete when we sit with you one-on-one, then there's probably a deeper reason for it. So we're looking forward to post community intervention impact assessments, and hopefully they'll come out really. Yes.
We talked about 3 billion households, so that's roughly 500 million plus households around the world that are still in need of cleaner, more efficient cooking solutions. So through the efforts of many partners, the partners here and the champions here on the panel, we're able to make some headway. We're about 60 million strong now, but there's still 400 plus to go. So we really do look at transformative approaches, very different ways of trying to truly disrupt, and trying to achieve some of these outcomes in a fairly quick level. So the last word over to you before I turn it over for questions from the panel.
Well, I know that this room is full of, people from the technological sector, finance sector, from public health to development sectors. What I want to tell them is that if you don't know about the issue, just take the time to really educate yourself about it, and know that, we're probably sitting on, one of the probably most biggest business opportunity that is out there. And, please go about, tweet, add, the hashtag Cookstoves, and let's really try and uplift the bottom of the pyramid up, and really empower people, empower women, at the same time too, working on the environment and, uplifting everybody along the way.
Great. Thank you. Well, we have a few minutes left. Thank you very much. Any questions from the audience in the last couple of minutes? Yes.
What's the biggest impediment that we all could, something we could all think of something to do? As you said, we go back to our cubby holes and think about things. What should we do to help you be more successful?
Great. We'll turn it over to our panelists. Kate?
I think it goes back to talking to the people we're communicating in our game, and really understanding where they're coming from. I think as funders and donors and program makers, we come in with our own agenda very often. And I think it is communication.
Yeah. I also think that, unlike other issues that have, so many champions around the world and people are aware of it, this issue requires a lot more voices and champions to keep amplifying it for people to become aware of it and also see the opportunity that comes with it. So I encourage everybody to, tell your friends, tweet about it, talk about it, find out about it, and, that's all I could ask for.
For us, I think that for countries where LPG, for example, is abundantly available, it should be a matter of national course, that the advocacy there is that should be the dominant fuel that's promoted at the level of government, by government, because governments actually promote different fuels for different reasons. So when there's an opportunity to advocate at the level of government, please by all means do so and sort of have your facts, and we have the facts and we can share them with you to ensure that they are also hearing, and that at every institution, whether it's a federal or a state or a local institution, the dominant mode of cooking should be using a clean cooking fuel alternative. I think that's really important.
So in addition to the few points that have been mentioned around awareness, championship, and policy change, the last thing I would add to that would be investment. This entire effort is built on the backs of social enterprises producing, distributing, financing cleaner and more efficient stoves and fuels. So these are enterprises that people can invest in. Development finance institutions can invest in. There will be a return to this as well. So Professor Yunus spoke earlier about social enterprises. The entire sector is built on social enterprises. It's a very different approach. So as we sit here in New York and we're listening to financing for development and the SDGs, this is one of those root cause issues, if invested in, will not only provide an individual rate of return, but provide a transformative rate of return because it affects 10 of the 17 SDGs directly. So if you're looking for a high rate of return on your investment across multiple areas, investing your funding in some of these enterprises is absolutely necessary as an engine of growth, and it will really result in significant change. Good. I think we are running out of time, so I'll close it. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you.